The metallic taste hit my tongue first, followed by an unusual bitterness in my morning smoothie. I glanced at my sister Emma, who was casually scrolling through her phone at the kitchen counter, a slight smirk playing on her lips. "Something wrong with your drink, Olivia?" she asked innocently, not looking up from her screen. I set the glass down, my hand trembling. This wasn't the first time I noticed strange tastes in my food and drinks over the past 3 months. Ever since I'd been named Dad's successor for his medical practice instead of Emma, things had been different. "Mom," I called out, my voice shaking. "I think Emma put something in my smoothie again." My mother stormed into the kitchen, her face already set in that familiar expression of exasperation. "Not this again, Olivia. You're 26 years old, for heaven's sake. Stop trying to blame your sister for everything." Emma's face transformed into a mask of hurt. "Mom, I can't believe she's still doing this. I've been nothing but supportive since Dad chose her for the practice." I wanted to scream. Supportive? The sister who'd once been my best friend had turned into a stranger who left threatening notes in my locker at the hospital where we both worked as residents. The sister who'd accidentally switched my patient charts last week, nearly causing a serious medication error. "Mom, please," I begged, feeling the first wave of dizziness hit me. "Something's wrong. I don't feel right." "Oh, stop being dramatic," my mother sighed. "You're just trying to get attention because your father's retiring next month. Emma's been so mature about the whole situation. Why can't you be?" The room started spinning. I grabbed the counter for support, but my legs gave way. The last thing I saw before hitting the floor was Emma's face, that slight smirk still in place. I woke up in the emergency room, the harsh fluorescent lights burning my eyes. Dr. Torres, my colleague from the hospital, stood over me with a concerned expression. "Olivia, can you hear me?" she asked, shining a light in my eyes. I tried to nod, but my body felt heavy. Through the glass walls of my room, I could see my parents arguing with someone in the hallway. Emma stood slightly apart, typing frantically on her phone. "Your blood pressure crashed," Dr. Torres explained. "We're running toxicology screens now. Can you tell me what happened?" My smoothie, I mumbled, tasted strange. "Emma, don't you dare blame your sister." My mother burst into the room, Dad following close behind. "Dr. Torres, our daughter has been making these ridiculous accusations for months. She's clearly having some kind of breakdown." Dr. Torres' expression hardened. "Mrs. Anderson, with all due respect, Olivia's symptoms are consistent with poisoning. As her attending physician, I'm obligated to investigate." "Poisoning?" Dad finally spoke, his face pale. "That's impossible. Emma would never." "Of course I wouldn't." Emma rushed in, tears streaming down her face. "Daddy, how could anyone think I'd hurt my own sister? This is just like Olivia, always trying to make me look bad." I tried to speak, to defend myself, but my tongue felt too thick. The room was starting to spin again. "Her BP's dropping again," Dr. Torres called out sharply. "Everyone out, and someone get me those tox screen results." As nurses rushed in, I caught a glimpse of Emma being ushered out with my parents. For a split second, our eyes met. The mask slipped, and I saw it. That cold, calculating look I'd grown familiar with over the past months. Hours later, I drifted in and out of consciousness as Dr. Torres spoke quietly with someone near my bed. "The initial results are concerning," she was saying. "High levels of warfarin, a blood thinner. It wouldn't be detected in routine blood work unless specifically tested for. Someone with medical knowledge would know that." "Are you suggesting?" Dad's voice cracked. "Dr. Anderson, these levels didn't come from casual exposure. This was deliberate administration over time, given Olivia's previous complaints." "No," Mom interrupted. "There has to be another explanation. The full toxicology report will be ready in an hour." Dr. Torres continued firmly. "I've already notified the police. This wasn't an accident." I forced my eyes open. Dr. Torres stood at the foot of my bed, holding my chart. My parents looked shell-shocked, their world crumbling around them. Through the glass, I could see 2 police officers talking to Emma, whose perfectly crafted mask was finally beginning to crack. "We found these in her locker," a nurse said, entering with a clear evidence bag. Inside were several small vials and a bottle of warfarin, the same type we stocked in the hospital pharmacy. Mom sank into a chair, her face ashen. Dad just stared at the evidence bag, his hands shaking. "The security footage from the hospital pharmacy should be interesting," Dr. Torres said quietly, "especially given the recent inventory discrepancies we've been investigating." As my family's carefully constructed facade began to crumble, I felt a strange sense of vindication through the haze of medication. For months, they dismissed my fears, called me paranoid, defended Emma at every turn. But lab results don't lie. And now, finally, everyone would know the truth. Through my half-closed eyes, I watched as the police led Emma away in handcuffs, her mask completely shattered, revealing the stranger she'd become. The sister I'd once known was long gone, replaced by someone who'd been willing to slowly poison me just because Dad had chosen me to take over his practice. The truth was finally coming out, but at what cost? The hospital room became a revolving door of police officers, toxicologists, and hospital administrators over the next 48 hours. Each new test revealed more disturbing details about Emma's methodical poisoning campaign. The warfarin levels suggest systematic administration over at least 2 months, Detective Lisa Chen explained, reviewing the toxicology reports with me. Given your medical training, you must have suspected something. I nodded weakly, still fighting the effects of the blood thinner. I started documenting everything after the first incident in the hospital cafeteria. I have a journal. Your sister claims it was just a prank on Rom, she continued, her expression skeptical. Says she only meant to make you sick enough to miss a few days of work. A harsh laugh escaped my throat. A prank? She knew exactly what warfarin does. As a doctor, she understood the risks of internal bleeding, stroke. My parents sat in the corner of the room, Mom quietly crying while Dad stared blankly at the wall. Their perfect family image had shattered, and they were still trying to pick up the pieces. We found her diary, Detective Chen said softly. It detailed everything. Her resentment over the practice, plans to discredit you professionally, and eventually, more permanent solutions. Mom's sobs grew louder. There has to be a mistake. Emma loves her sister. Mrs. Anderson, Detective Chen turned to face them. Your daughter wrote explicitly about wanting Olivia dead. The diary entries correspond exactly with the timeline of poisoning incidents. Dad finally spoke, his voice hollow. I did this. I caused this by choosing Olivia for the practice. No, I said firmly, surprising myself with the strength in my voice. Emma made her own choices. This isn't about the practice. It's about control. It always has been. The hospital psychiatrist who evaluated Emma had said the same thing. The practice was just the trigger that unleashed years of hidden resentment and rivalry. A knock at the door interrupted us. Dr. Torres entered, holding more test results. We found traces of other substances in your system, she said grimly. Looks like the warfarin wasn't the first thing she tried. My stomach churned as I remembered all the times I'd felt inexplicably ill over the past months. The mysterious stomach bugs, the dizzy spells, the constant fatigue. How many times had my family dismissed my concerns? The hospital board is launching a full investigation, Dr. Torres continued. We need to review every patient interaction Emma had, every prescription she wrote. The implications hit me hard. How many others might have been affected by my sister's actions? How many patients have been put at risk? Detective Chen made a note in her file. The DA is pushing for attempted murder charges, along with multiple counts of medical misconduct. Given the premeditation involved, she'll lose her medical license, Dad whispered, looking devastated. She should. I exploded, months of suppressed anger finally boiling over. She tried to kill me. She violated her oath as a doctor. And you're still worried about her career? The room fell silent. Mom's sobs stopped abruptly as she stared at me in shock. Olivia, she started, but I cut her off. No, Mom, no more excuses. For months I told you something was wrong. I begged you to believe me, but you were so focused on protecting Emma, on maintaining this image of a perfect family, that you couldn't see what was happening right in front of you. Dr. Torres stepped forward. Your daughter needs rest, she said firmly to my parents. I think it's time for everyone to leave. As they filed out, Dad paused at the door. I'm sorry, Olivia. I should have listened. I closed my eyes, too tired to respond. The weight of everything, the poisoning, the betrayal, the family dynamics that had led us here, felt crushing. Detective Chen remained behind briefly. We'll need your statement once you're stronger, she said gently. But there's something else you should know. We found evidence that Emma was planning something bigger for the practice handover ceremony next month. A chill ran through me. The ceremony where Dad would officially announce me as his successor in front of the entire medical community. What kind of evidence? Let's just say the warfarin was just a test run, she replied grimly. You're lucky we caught this when we did." As she left, I stared out the window at the gathering dusk. The sister I'd grown up with, shared secrets with, dreamed of working alongside in medicine. She'd been planning my death all along. Dr. Torres returned with my evening medication. "We've arranged for a trauma counselor to visit tomorrow," she said, checking my vitals. "And the hospital is providing security until your sister's bail hearing." "How did I not see it sooner?" I whispered. She squeezed my hand. "Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones we least want to suspect. But you did see it, Olivia. You knew something was wrong, even when everyone else denied it. That awareness saved your life." As night fell over the hospital, I thought about the long road ahead. The trial, the family fallout, the professional implications. But for the first time in months, I could breathe without fear. The truth was finally out, and no one could deny it anymore. 1 year later, I stood at the podium in the courthouse, preparing to deliver my victim impact statement at Emma's sentencing hearing. The trial had been a media sensation. 2 doctor sisters, a family practice succession, and attempted murder by poisoning. The headlines wrote themselves. Emma sat at the defense table, her hospital scrubs replaced by a conservative gray suit. She'd lost weight during her year in custody, but her eyes still held that cold calculation I'd come to recognize. "Your Honor," I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "A year ago, my sister tried to kill me because she couldn't accept that she wouldn't inherit our father's medical practice. But this isn't just about inheritance or professional jealousy. This is about a trusted doctor who violated every oath she took, as a physician, as a sister, and as a human being." The courtroom was silent as I continued. "She didn't just poison my body, she poisoned my family's trust in each other." While I lay in a hospital bed, fighting the effects of warfarin toxicity, she was already planning her next attempt on my life. The only thing that stopped her was a careful lab technician who decided to run additional tests. I glanced at my parents sitting in the back row. Mom had aged years in the past 12 months, while Dad had resigned from his practice entirely, unable to face his patients after everything that had happened. They both started therapy, finally confronting the family dynamics that had enabled Emma's behavior. "The medical community is built on trust," I continued. "Patients trust us with their lives. Families trust us with their loved ones. My sister betrayed that trust in the most fundamental way possible. She used her medical knowledge not to heal, but to harm. Not just me, but also 3 patients whose cases were discovered during the investigation." Emma's face tightened at the mention of the other victims. The hospital's investigation had uncovered 3 cases where she deliberately altered medication doses, attempting to prove I was an incompetent doctor. Thankfully, none had resulted in fatalities, but the damage to those families' trust was irreparable. I spent the past year recovering, not just physically, but emotionally. Every time I drink something, I still hesitate, wondering if it's been tampered with. Every time I write a prescription, I double and triple check it, haunted by how easily my sister manipulated medication to hurt people. Dr. Torres, sitting in the front row, nodded encouragingly. She'd become both a mentor and friend, helping me rebuild my confidence as a doctor. But I won't let what she did destroy my love for medicine or my commitment to helping others. In fact, this experience has made me a better doctor. I listen more carefully to patients who say something feels wrong. I take every complaint seriously because I know what it's like to have legitimate fears dismissed. Emma shifted in her seat, her mask slipping to reveal a flash of anger. Her defense strategy of claiming temporary mental breakdown due to stress had failed spectacularly, thanks to her detailed diary and the evidence of long-term planning. "Your Honor, my sister is a danger not just to me, but to any patient she might treat. She used her medical knowledge as a weapon. She violated the trust of her family, her patients, and her profession. I asked the court to ensure she never has the opportunity to harm another person under the guise of medical care." As I returned to my seat, Emma's attorney rose for a final plea, but the judge had heard enough. "Dr. Emma Anderson," the judge began, "this court finds your actions particularly egregious given your position as a medical professional. You deliberately poisoned your sister over an extended period, planned her murder, and endangered innocent patients in your attempt to discredit her. I sentence you to 25 years in state prison, with no possibility of parole for 15 years. Furthermore, your medical license is permanently revoked." Emma's composure finally cracked. "She stole everything from me," she screamed as officers approached. "The practice should have been mine." As they led her away, I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. The sister I'd grown up with was truly gone, replaced by someone I no longer recognized. Outside the courthouse, Dr. Torres waited with Detective Chen, who'd become another unexpected ally during this ordeal. Ready to get back to work? Dr. Torres asked. Your patients miss you. I nodded. I'd taken over Dad's practice 6 months ago, after he decided to retire. It wasn't the celebration we'd originally planned, but it felt right. You know, Detective Chen said, your story has already helped 3 other families recognize poisoning symptoms in their own homes. Sometimes the worst experiences create the most important awareness. As we walked to our cars, I thought about the support group I'd started for survivors of family violence, particularly those affected by medical abuse. Every week, more people came forward with their stories. The practice is different than I imagined, I told them. But maybe that's good. Instead of just treating illnesses, we're creating a safe space for people to voice their concerns and be believed. The autumn sun was setting as I drove home, casting long shadows across the city. The past year had changed everything. My family, my practice, my understanding of trust and betrayal. But it had also shown me my own strength and the power of being believed. I was no longer just my father's successor or Emma's sister. I was my own person, a doctor who understood firsthand the importance of listening to patients' fears. Sometimes the most powerful medicine is simply believing someone when they say something's wrong. She can't be the flower girl, my sister-in-law, Amanda, declared, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against her wedding planner. I mean, look at how she walks. It'll ruin the whole ceremony. My heart clenched as I glanced at my 6-year-old daughter, Lily, who was happily coloring at the kitchen table, blissfully unaware that her aunt was crushing her dream of being a flower girl. Lily had been practicing her walk for weeks, despite her cerebral palsy making each step a challenge. She's your niece, Amanda, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the anger building inside me. She's been talking about this for months. Amanda rolled her eyes, a gesture I'd grown all too familiar with over the years. This is my perfect day, Sarah. I can't have her wobbling down the aisle, making everyone uncomfortable. I've already asked my friend's daughter to do it. She's just more suitable. More suitable. The words hit me like a slap. I looked at Lily again, at her determined little face as she concentrated on staying within the lines of her coloring book. Every crayon stroke was a victory for her, every day a testament to her strength. Mom, Lily called out, her voice bright with excitement. Look what I made. It's for Aunt Amanda's wedding. She held up her drawing, a picture of herself in a pink dress, throwing flower petals. The lines were wobbly, but the joy in the crayon figure's smile was unmistakable. Amanda barely glanced at it. That's nice, she said dismissively. Then she turned back to me. Sarah, you understand, right? I need everything to be perfect. The video, the photos, I can't have any distractions. My daughter, her cerebral palsy, her determined spirit, all reduced to a distraction in Amanda's pursuit of perfection. Of course, I replied, my tone arctic. We wouldn't want to ruin your perfect day with our imperfections. In fact, maybe we shouldn't come at all. Amanda sighed. Don't be dramatic. Of course you should come. Just keep her quiet during the ceremony. And try to dress her in something that doesn't make her leg braces too obvious. I was about to respond when my husband Tom, Amanda's brother, walked in. He must have read the tension in my face because he immediately came to stand beside me. What's going on? He asked, his hand finding mine. Your sister just informed me that Lily can't be the flower girl because she walks funny. I said, loud enough for Lily to hear. It was time for honesty. Apparently, she's not suitable for the perfect wedding. Tom's face darkened. Amanda, you can't be serious. It's my wedding, she snapped. My day. Why is everyone trying to make me feel guilty about wanting it to be perfect? Mommy? Lily's small voice cut through the tension. She had stopped coloring, her face confused and hurt. Don't I get to throw the flowers anymore? I watched Amanda's face, waiting for some sign of empathy, some recognition of the pain she was causing. Instead, she gathered her wedding planner and stood up. I should go, she said. I have a final dress fitting. The flower girl, the new one, is coming too. Her walk is just, well, better. As Amanda clicked her way out of our house in her expensive heels, Lily wheeled her walker over to me, her movements careful but determined. Did I do something wrong, Mommy? She asked, her lower lip trembling. Is it because I'm too slow? I pulled her into my lap, holding her close. No, baby. You didn't do anything wrong. Aunt Amanda is the one who's wrong. Tom knelt beside us, his face a mix of anger and sadness. I'll talk to her, he said. Make her understand. But I shook my head. No, we're not going to beg her to accept our daughter. Lily deserves better than that. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Tom and I sat on our back porch, the weight of the day settling around us. I could see the guilt eating at him, the pain of watching his sister reject his daughter. Maybe we should skip the wedding, he suggested. Show her she can't treat Lily like this. I took a sip of my tea, an idea forming in my mind. No, I said slowly. We're going to that wedding, and I'm going to make sure your sister never forgets it. What are you planning? Tom asked, knowing the look in my eyes. I smiled, thinking of the dance lessons Lily had been taking in secret, the hours of physical therapy she'd endured without complaint, the determination that drove her to try again every time she fell. Just wait, I said. Some things are worth more than being a flower girl, and your sister is about to learn that perfection comes in many forms. As I went to bed that night, I could hear Lily practicing in her room, counting her steps just like her dance teacher had taught her. 1, 2, 3, pause. 1, 2, 3, pause. Each step a victory, each movement a defiance of those who said she couldn't. Amanda had no idea what was coming. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about rising above, about showing the world that different doesn't mean less. And my daughter, with her wobbly walk and determined spirit, was about to prove just that. The next few weeks would test us all. But as I drifted off to sleep, I smiled, knowing that by the time Amanda's perfect wedding was over, everyone would see my daughter exactly as I did, not as the girl who walked funny, but as the girl who refused to let anything stop her from dancing. The day of Amanda's wedding arrived with picture-perfect weather. As we pulled up to the grand church, I watched through the rearview mirror as Lily took in the scene, the flowers, the decorations, the gathering crowd. She wore a beautiful blue dress we had chosen together, her leg braces proudly visible. Remember what we practiced? I whispered to her as Tom helped her out of the car. She nodded, her eyes shining with determination. Just like in dance class, Mommy. We entered the church to find chaos in the bridal suite. Amanda's voice carried down the hallway, high-pitched and frantic. What do you mean she's sick? She's supposed to be my flower girl. The ceremony starts in an hour. I shared a knowing look with Tom. The universe, it seemed, had its own sense of justice. Amanda burst out of the suite, her wedding dress rustling. Her eyes landed on us, specifically on Lily, and I could see the wheels turning in her head. No, she said firmly, reading my expression. Absolutely not. Your flower girl has the stomach flu, I stated calmly. Lily knows the route. She's been practicing. Practicing? Amanda laughed bitterly. She can barely walk straight. Lily's small voice cut through the tension. I can do it, Aunt Amanda. I've been working really hard. Working hard at what? Amanda scoffed. This isn't one of your therapy sessions. This is my wedding. Tom stepped forward, his patience finally snapping. That's enough, Amanda. Either Lily is your flower girl or we're leaving. Your choice. The silence that followed was deafening. Amanda looked between us, her perfectly made-up face contorting with conflict. Finally, she threw up her hands. Fine, but if she ruins this, she won't, I said firmly, squeezing Lily's hand. The next hour was a blur of activity. The wedding coordinator quickly got Lily ready, pinning a small basket of rose petals to her walker, an adaptation we had planned for, just in case this opportunity arose. As the ceremony began, I stood at the back of the church with Lily, my heart pounding. Amanda had insisted on going last to check Lily's performance, probably hoping to stop her if things went wrong. Ready, sweetheart? I whispered. Lily nodded, gripping her walker, just like we practiced, Mommy. The music started, not the traditional wedding march, but something slower, more graceful. The coordinator gave Lily her cue, and she began her journey down the aisle. What happened next left everyone breathless. Lily, my beautiful, determined daughter, didn't just walk, she danced. Using her walker as a partner, she performed the routine we had spent months perfecting with her dance teacher. Each step was deliberate, graceful, timed perfectly to the music. She paused every few feet, carefully releasing one hand from her walker to scatter petals before continuing her choreographed movement. The walker became part of her dance, not a crutch, but an extension of her grace. The church was silent except for the music and the soft sound of petals hitting the floor. I saw tears in the eyes of the guests, not out of pity, but awe. This wasn't a child struggling to walk. This was an artist performing her masterpiece. Even Amanda stood frozen at the back of the church, her mouth slightly open as she watched her niece transform her perfectly planned wedding aisle into a stage. When Lily reached the altar, she did one final turn with her walker, scattering the last of her petals in a perfect arc. The guests burst into spontaneous applause, something I was sure had never happened at any of Amanda's wedding rehearsals. I watched as Amanda dabbed at her eyes, careful not to smudge her makeup, but I knew it wasn't just the emotion of her wedding day that had brought those tears. For the first time, she was truly seeing Lily. As Amanda began her own walk down the aisle, I noticed she had slowed her pace to match the rhythm Lily had set. Whether consciously or not, she was following in her niece's graceful footsteps. The rest of the ceremony proceeded according to plan, but something had shifted in the atmosphere. The perfectionism that had dominated every aspect of Amanda's wedding had been softened by something more genuine, the unscripted beauty of a little girl's determination. During the photo session, the photographer couldn't get enough of Lily. She kept positioning her front and center, fascinated by how the light caught her smiling face in her walker, now decorated with leftover rose petals. "She's a natural," the photographer said, showing me some of the shots. "These are going to be absolutely stunning." I watched as Amanda looked over our shoulders at the photos, her expression unreadable. The perfect wedding she'd had planned had been upstaged by the very imperfection she had tried to hide. But this was only the beginning. What would happen at the reception would leave an even bigger impact on Amanda's perfect day. As we headed to the venue, I smiled, knowing that Lily's next surprise would challenge everything Amanda thought she knew about perfection. The question wasn't whether Amanda's wedding would be perfect anymore. It was whether she would finally understand that true perfection often comes in unexpected packages. The reception venue was exactly as Amanda had planned: elegant centerpieces, crystal chandeliers, and a gleaming dance floor waiting for the first dance. What she hadn't planned was what happened during the father-daughter dance. As the DJ announced the traditional dance, I gave Tom a subtle nod. He squeezed my hand and walked over to Amanda, who was still basking in the attention of her perfect wedding. But instead of moving to the dance floor, he turned to face the crowd. "Before I dance with my sister," Tom said into the microphone, his voice steady, "I'd like to share a special dance with my daughter." Amanda's head snapped up, but before she could protest, the music changed. The classical wedding playlist was replaced by "A Million Dreams" from The Greatest Showman, Lily's favorite song, and the one she'd been practicing to for months. Tom walked over to Lily, who was practically bouncing in her seat with excitement. "May I have this dance, princess?" The guests watched, curious, as Tom helped Lily to the center of the dance floor. She left her walker behind. She wouldn't need it for this. The routine began simply, Tom supporting Lily as they swayed to the music. But then, just as we had practiced, he lifted her onto his feet. Lily's face lit up with pure joy as they began to move together, her father compensating for every limitation her cerebral palsy imposed. They spun and glided across the floor, Lily's dress twirling around her leg braces. Tom lifted her into gentle spins, her laughter ringing out across the silent venue. Every movement was choreographed to work with her abilities, not against them. I glanced at Amanda, who stood frozen at the edge of the dance floor. Gone was the bride who had worried about perfect photos and flawless ceremonies. In her place was a woman watching her brother and niece redefine what perfect could mean. As the song reached its crescendo, Tom lifted Lily high into the air. She stretched out her arms like a bird in flight, completely trusting her father to keep her safe. When he brought her down, she wrapped her arms around his neck, and they finished the dance with a simple sway. The reception hall erupted in applause. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Even the DJ was wiping away tears. Amanda walked over to them, her carefully applied makeup slightly smudged. For a moment, she just stood there, looking at Lily as if seeing her for the first time. "I'm sorry," she finally whispered, kneeling to Lily's level. "I was so wrong. You made my wedding more beautiful than I ever could have imagined." Lily, with the pure forgiveness of a child, simply hugged her aunt. "It's okay. Want to see me dance again? Amanda laughed through her tears. I want to see you dance every chance I get. The rest of the reception became something entirely different from what Amanda had planned. The rigid schedule was forgotten as Lily took to the dance floor again and again, sometimes with her father, sometimes using her walker as a partner. Other guests joined her, following her lead, learning that dance didn't have to be perfect to be beautiful. Later that night, as we were getting ready to leave, the photographer showed us some preview shots on her camera. There was Lily scattering petals in her choreographed walk down the aisle, her face glowing with concentration. There was her dance with Tom, caught mid-spin, joy radiating from both their faces. But my favorite was a candid shot. Amanda sitting next to Lily, both of them laughing as they tried to copy each other's dance moves. The bride's perfect hair had come slightly undone, her carefully planned facade cracked open to reveal something much more precious. These are the most beautiful wedding photos I've ever taken, the photographer said. They tell a real story. As we drove home that night, Lily fell asleep in her car seat, still wearing her dance dress, a smile on her tired face. Tom reached over and squeezed my hand. You knew this would happen, didn't you? He asked. When you and Lily started those secret dance lessons, I smiled, thinking of all the hours of practice, all the falls and triumphs that had led to this moment. I knew Lily would show everyone exactly who she is, not despite her cerebral palsy, but with it. It's part of her dance, part of her story. 2 weeks later, Amanda came to visit. She brought the official wedding photos, but she also brought something else. A registration form for a dance class she wanted to take with Lily. If my niece can dance, she said, then her aunt can learn to dance with her. Sometimes the most perfect moments come from the things we once thought would ruin our perfect plans. Amanda's wedding hadn't been the flawless event she had imagined. It had been something far better. It had been real, beautiful, and unforgettable, just like Lily's dance. Get out. You don't deserve to be here. My mother-in-law, Sarah, screamed, her perfectly manicured finger pointing at the door of her lavish suburban home. My grandson deserves a real mother, not a failure like you. I stood in her pristine kitchen, surrounded by the expensive birthday decorations she'd chosen for my son Oliver's 5th birthday party. The other mothers from his preschool class shifted uncomfortably, trying to avoid eye contact while shielding their children from the scene unfolding before them. My name is Emma Mitchell, and at 32, I never imagined I'd be thrown out of my own son's birthday party. But here I was, watching my mother-in-law orchestrate yet another power play in her endless campaign to prove I wasn't good enough for her precious family. You think being a part-time photographer makes you fit to be a Mitchell? She continued, her voice dripping with disdain. Look at this party. Do you think you could have provided any of this for Oliver on your own? I glanced at the elaborate dinosaur-themed decorations, the custom cake from the city's most expensive bakery, and the mountain of wrapped presents. She was right about one thing. I couldn't have afforded this extravagant display, but that's not what Oliver had asked for. Mommy? Oliver's small voice cut through the tension. He stood in the doorway, confusion written across his face, his favorite dinosaur t-shirt, the one I tie-dyed with him last weekend, already stained with cake frosting. Why is Grandma yelling? Before I could respond, Sarah swooped in, pulling him into a tight embrace. Don't worry, sweetheart. Grandma's just helping Mommy understand that sometimes it's better to let the people who really love you take care of things. I felt my husband David's hand on my shoulder, but his grip was weak, uncertain. Just like always, he stood silently by, unwilling to challenge his mother's authority. Maybe you should go, Emma, he whispered. You're upsetting everyone. I looked around the room one last time, taking in the uncomfortable guests, my mother-in-law's triumphant smirk, and my son's confused face. Then, surprisingly calm, I smiled. You're right, I said, my voice steady. I should go. Oliver, honey, Mommy has to leave for a little while. But I promise this isn't the end of your birthday celebration. Sarah's smirk widened. Always making promises you can't keep. That's your problem, Emma. You never know when to admit defeat. I walked to the door, pausing only to blow a kiss to Oliver. I love you, buddy. See you soon. As I drove away from Sarah's house, my hands finally started shaking. But it wasn't from fear or sadness, it was anticipation. What Sarah didn't know was that I'd been preparing for something like this for months. Ever since Oliver had first mentioned wanting a dinosaur-themed birthday party, I've been working on a surprise. Not the kind of surprise Sarah would appreciate. Nothing expensive or showy. Instead, I'd been pouring my heart and photography skills into something much more meaningful. I pulled into my driveway and headed straight for my home office. There, spread across my desk, were the fruits of 6 months of secret labor. Dozens of photographs I'd taken of Oliver at the Natural History Museum, where I'd been volunteering as their event photographer. Photos of him with real paleontologists, helping to clean actual dinosaur bones, exploring behind-the-scenes areas most kids never got to see. Next to the photos sat an official-looking envelope from the museum's education department. I picked it up, running my fingers over the embossed letterhead. Inside was the culmination of countless meetings, favors called in, and hours of volunteer work, approval for the first ever kid-curated dinosaur exhibit, featuring Oliver's own photographs and stories. My phone buzzed with texts from the other mothers who had witnessed Sarah's outburst. "Are you okay? That was horrible. She had no right." I responded to each one with the same message. "Thank you for your concern. If you'd like to see Oliver's real birthday celebration, bring the kids to the Natural History Museum tomorrow at 10 a.m. Trust me, it'll be worth it." Sarah thought she'd won today, thought she'd finally proven I wasn't good enough to be part of her family. She had no idea that while she was planning her elaborate party, I'd been building something much more meaningful, something that would show everyone, especially Oliver, what really mattered. I sat down at my computer and began finalizing the details for tomorrow. The museum's education director had already confirmed everything was ready, and the local newspaper reporter I contacted was eager to cover the story of their youngest ever guest curator. My phone rang, David calling, probably to lecture me about making a scene. I let it go to voicemail. He'd find out tomorrow, along with everyone else, exactly what kind of mother I really was. For now, I had work to do. Sarah's expensive party may have been ruined, but Oliver's real celebration was just beginning. The next morning, I arrived at the museum 2 hours early. The halls were quiet, our footsteps echoing as Dr. Anderson, the head paleontologist, helped me make the final adjustments to the exhibit. Oliver's photographs lined the walls of the special exhibition space, not just snapshots, but carefully composed images showcasing his journey over the past 6 months. "These are remarkable, Emma," Dr. Anderson said, adjusting the lighting on a photo of Oliver carefully cleaning a raptor claw. "I still can't believe these were taken by a 5-year-old. "He has a good eye," I replied, straightening a caption Oliver had dictated to me, "and an even better heart." My phone buzzed constantly, messages from David alternating between anger and confusion. "Mom's furious about your museum invitation. What are you trying to prove? Oliver's already had his party." I ignored them all. They'd understand soon enough. At 9:45, families started arriving. I watched from the second floor as parents and children from Oliver's class filtered into the museum lobby, many clutching the invitations I'd sent last night. Some looked uncertain, probably wondering if they were taking sides in a family drama. But their children's excitement at being in the museum was evident. At 9:55, I saw Sarah's Mercedes pull into the parking lot. She emerged in her designer outfit, gripping Oliver's hand tightly, with David trailing behind them. Her face was set in grim determination. She was probably expecting some small, sad attempt to compete with her lavish party. "Ready?" Dr. Anderson asked, adjusting his tie. I nodded. "Let's give Oliver his real birthday surprise." At exactly 10 a.m., Dr. Anderson stepped up to the podium in the museum's main hall. The crowd fell quiet as he began to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special event. Today, we're making museum history with our youngest ever guest curator. Over the past 6 months, this remarkable young man has been working alongside our paleontology team, documenting his experience through photography and storytelling." Sarah's face contorted in confusion. Oliver, standing next to her, perked up at the mention of paleontology. "Please join me in welcoming our guest of honor, Oliver Mitchell." Oliver's eyes went wide as the spotlight found him in the crowd. "Me?" he squeaked. I descended the stairs, holding out my hand to him. "Come on, buddy. Want to show everyone what you've been doing with Mommy." He broke free from Sarah's grip and ran to me, his face glowing with excitement. Together, we walked to the front of the room. For the past 6 months, I explained to the assembled crowd, Oliver has been spending his Saturday mornings here at the museum. not just visiting, but working alongside real paleontologists, learning about dinosaurs, and capturing his experience through photography. The museum staff unveiled the exhibition entrance, where a huge photo of Oliver, wearing a junior paleontologist vest, beamed down at everyone. Sarah's jaw dropped. "Oliver," Dr. Anderson said, handing him a small pair of scissors, "would you do the honors of cutting the ribbon to open your very first museum exhibit?" As Oliver excitedly cut the ribbon, flashbulbs popped, the local newspaper photographer capturing the moment. The crowd burst into applause, then followed us into the exhibition space. The walls told a story, Oliver's story. Photos showed him learning to clean fossils, helping to catalog specimens, and even assisting in creating educational materials for other children. Each image was accompanied by his own words, his descriptions of what he'd learned and what it meant to him. "Did you really take all these pictures?" one of his classmates asked in awe. Oliver nodded proudly. "Mommy taught me how to use her camera properly, and look," he ran to a display case. "These are real dinosaur bones I helped clean." Parents and children moved through the space, reading Oliver's descriptions and admiring his photographs. The other mothers who'd witnessed yesterday's scene came to hug me, their earlier discomfort replaced by understanding and support. Sarah stood in the middle of it all, her perfectly composed facade crumbling as she watched Oliver expertly explain fossil preparation techniques to his amazed classmates. David moved closer to the photos, studying them with an intensity I hadn't seen from him in years. Mrs. Mitchell, a newspaper reporter, approached, notebook in hand. "Could you tell us what inspired this unique project?" Before I could answer, Oliver piped up. "My mommy's the best photographer ever. She taught me that pictures tell stories, and I wanted to tell everyone about my dinosaurs." The reporter smiled, jotting down his words. "And how long have you been planning this exhibition?" 6 months, I replied, watching as realization dawned on Sarah's face. All those Saturdays she'd smugly assumed I was working at meaningless photography jobs. I'd been here with Oliver, building something priceless. Some things are worth taking time to do right. Dr. Anderson stepped forward again, raising his voice to address the crowd. "And we have one more surprise. Oliver's exhibition has been so successful in its soft opening that the museum board has voted to extend it for 3 months as part of our regular exhibition schedule. Oliver will be our youngest ever contributing artist." The crowd erupted in applause again. Oliver bounced with excitement, hugging my legs tightly. "Did you hear that, Grandma?" he called out to Sarah. "My pictures are going to be in the museum forever." I watched as Sarah's carefully constructed narrative about me, the failure, the unworthy mother, crumbled in front of everyone. But this wasn't about revenge. This was about showing my son that love isn't measured in expensive parties or wrapped presents. It's measured in time, in patience, in nurturing what makes someone special. As Oliver led his friends on a personal tour of his exhibition, David finally approached me. "Emma," he started, but I held up my hand. "Not now," I said quietly. "Today is about Oliver." He nodded, understanding that we had a lot to discuss later. For now, I watched my son shine, knowing that this birthday would be remembered not for Sarah's extravagant party, but for the moment Oliver realized just how capable he was. And that was worth more than all the elaborate parties in the world. 2 weeks after the museum exhibition opened, I sat in my home office, editing photos from my latest wedding shoot. The exhibition had changed everything, not just for Oliver, but for my photography business too. The newspaper coverage had led to several calls from other museums interested in my work with children and education. My phone buzzed. Sarah's name flashing on the screen. Since the exhibition opening, she had left without a word, and I hadn't heard from her since. I considered letting it go to voicemail, but decided it was time to face whatever came next. "Hello, Sarah," I answered, keeping my voice neutral. "Emma." Her voice sounded different, lacking its usual sharp edge. I visited Oliver's exhibition again yesterday." This surprised me. "Oh." I watched a little boy about Oliver's age standing in front of his photos for almost an hour, she continued. He kept telling his mother he wanted to be just like Oliver. "A real scientist," he said. I waited, sensing there was more. "I've been wrong," she admitted finally, the words seeming to cost her considerable effort. "About you, about what makes a good mother." I saw how proud Oliver was, not just of the photos, but of everything he'd learned. No amount of expensive parties could have given him that. No, I agreed quietly. They couldn't. David showed me all the Saturday photos on his phone, she went on. The ones he took of you and Oliver working together at the museum. I never saw that side of your relationship. I thought about those Saturdays, the quiet moments teaching Oliver about composition, watching his face light up when he got the perfect shot, seeing him grow more confident with each new skill he mastered. Being a Mitchell, I said carefully, isn't about money or status, Sarah. It's about building something meaningful. That's what I've been trying to show Oliver all along. There was a long pause. The museum called me, she said finally. They want to start a regular program for children inspired by Oliver's project. They asked if I would consider funding it, as Oliver's grandmother. Now it was my turn to be surprised. And I said yes, it felt right. But Emma, I'd like you to be involved too, as the program's photographer and instructor, if you're willing. I heard the olive branch for what it was, not just a job offer, but an acknowledgement of my worth as both a professional and a mother. David had been making his own amends. He'd started coming to the museum on Saturdays not to interfere, but to learn about this world Oliver and I had created together. Last weekend, he'd even picked up a camera himself. I need to think about it, I told Sarah honestly. A lot has happened. I understand, she replied, and for once I believed she did. Just, thank you, for showing me what I almost destroyed. After we hung up, I walked to Oliver's room. He was on the floor, carefully arranging his dinosaur figures in a scene he wanted to photograph. His junior paleontologist vest hung proudly on his wall, next to a framed copy of the newspaper article about his exhibition. Hey, buddy, I said, sitting down beside him. What are you creating? A story, Mommy, like we do at the museum. See, this T-Rex is teaching the baby dinos how to be brave and strong, even when the big scary dinosaurs don't believe in them. I smiled, recognizing the parallel he had drawn. That sounds like a very important story, Oliver. Want me to help you photograph it? He beamed up at me. Yes, and can we show Grandma when it's done? She visited my exhibition again, did you know? She said she's learning to see things differently now. Yeah, I said, helping him adjust the lighting just the way I'd taught him. I think she is. In the end, this wasn't about proving Sarah wrong or standing up to her attempts to push me away. It was about showing Oliver that true worth isn't measured in grand gestures or expensive gifts, but in the patient, quiet moments where we build something meaningful together. As I watched him carefully compose his shot, his little face serious with concentration, I knew that he understood. Every photo he took, every story he told, was a testament to the kind of love that money couldn't buy, the kind that took time, patience, and faith to build. Sarah's program funding offer sat in the back of my mind, not as a peace offering to be accepted or rejected, but as a sign that change was possible. Real change, the kind that started with admitting you were wrong and doing better. Oliver looked up from his camera, his face glowing with pride. Look, Mommy, I got it just right. And he had. Not just the photo, but the lesson behind it all, that sometimes the biggest victories come not from grand gestures, but from the quiet certainty of knowing exactly who you are and what you're worth. That was worth more than any birthday party in the world. They don't deserve these presents, my sister-in-law, Amanda, hissed, snatching the carefully wrapped gifts from my children's hands. My kids come from better breeding. These should be theirs. I stood frozen in my mother-in-law's elegant living room, watching in horror as my twins, Emily and James, both having just turned 8, clutched each other, tears streaming down their faces. The birthday party I'd spent weeks planning was crumbling before my eyes. My name is Olivia, and I never thought I'd see my children kicked out of their own birthday celebration. But Amanda, who had married my husband's brother just 2 years ago, had other plans. Mom, Emily whispered, her voice trembling, why is Aunt Amanda taking our presents? Before I could answer, Amanda's shrill voice cut through the air. Because your cousins, Sophia and Alexander, actually deserve nice things. Look at them. They are wearing Gucci. And what are you wearing? Target? She sneered at their carefully chosen party outfits, ones I'd saved for 3 months to buy. The other parents at the party shifted uncomfortably, trying to shield their children from the scene unfolding. My mother-in-law, Margaret, sat in her favorite armchair, lips pursed but silent. She had always favored her younger son and his wife, but this was a new low. Amanda, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. Those gifts are for Emily and James. This is their birthday party. She laughed, a cold, sharp sound that made my skin crawl. Please, Olivia. We all know you can barely afford rent in that tiny apartment of yours. My children deserve these gifts more. They'll actually appreciate the designer labels. My twins pressed closer to me, their small bodies trembling. James, always the more sensitive one, was trying hard not to cry. Emily's little fists were clenched, her inherited stubbornness showing through her tears. Pack up your things, Amanda commanded, already stacking the presents near her own children. This party is over. Sophia and Alexander will have much more fun with their friends anyway. But Grandma, Emily pleaded, looking at Margaret, you said we could have our party here. You promised. Margaret finally spoke, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. Perhaps it's best if you have a smaller celebration at your apartment, dear. Somewhere more appropriate for your situation. I felt something snap inside me. 4 years of enduring Amanda's jabs about my single-parent status after my husband's death. Of watching her spoil her children while belittling mine. Of bearing Margaret's thinly veiled disapproval. It all came to a head. We're leaving, I announced, gathering my children close. But those presents stay here. They were given to Emily and James by their friends. Amanda's face twisted into an ugly smirk. Try and stop me. This is Margaret's house, and she agrees with me. Don't you, Margaret? My mother-in-law nodded, not even looking at my children's devastated faces. Amanda's right, Olivia. Perhaps this is for the best. As I helped my twins gather their coats, Amanda's voice carried across the room. Oh, and Olivia, don't expect any more invitations to family events. We need to maintain certain standards, you understand. I guided my crying children toward the door, their unopened presents remaining behind in Amanda's greedy hands. But just as we reached the entrance, an elderly voice rang out. And just what do you think you're doing to my great-grandchildren? Everyone turned to see Grandma Rose, Margaret's mother, standing in the doorway. At 92, she was still sharp as a tack and the family matriarch. Her eyes took in the scene, my tearful children, Amanda's smug face, the pile of relocated presents. I was just coming to wish the twins a happy birthday, she said, her voice carrying the weight of decades of authority. Would someone like to explain why they're leaving their own party? Amanda's confidence wavered slightly. Rose, we were just reorganizing things. The children. Save it, Grandma Rose cut her off. Margaret, Amanda, my study. Now, she turned to me and the twins, her stern expression softening. Olivia, dear, please wait here with the children. This won't take long. As the 3 women disappeared into Grandma Rose's study, I held my twins close, wondering what could possibly make this situation right. Emily and James had already seen their family's true colors. How do you undo that kind of hurt? What I didn't know then was that Grandma Rose had already set wheels in motion that would change everything. The inheritance letter sitting in her desk drawer, freshly updated just that morning, was about to turn Amanda's perfect world upside down. But for now, I just held my children, whispering promises that everything would be okay, even as I wondered how we'd ever recover from this betrayal. The muffled voices from the study grew louder, and I knew this birthday party was just the beginning of something much bigger than a few stolen presents. Little did Amanda know, her actions today would cost her far more than she could imagine. The study door burst open, and Amanda stormed out, her face flushed with anger. Margaret followed, looking unusually pale. Grandma Rose emerged last, her expression stern but satisfied. Emily, James, Grandma Rose called, "Come here, my darlings." My twins approached cautiously, still shaken from earlier events. Your party isn't over. In fact, it's moving to my house. The big one by the lake. Everyone's invited except, she paused, looking pointedly at Amanda. Those who don't understand the meaning of family. Amanda's mouth fell open. But Rose, you can't. I can and I will. Grandma Rose cut her off. The cars are already on their way to transport the guests. Margaret, help gather the presents. The ones that actually belonged to Emily and James. I watched in amazement as the power dynamic shifted. Amanda stood frozen, her designer dress suddenly looking cheap against her petty behavior. Her own children, Sophia and Alexander, looked confused as the other kids excitedly gathered their things for the move to Grandma's lake house. But what about my children? Amanda demanded. They deserve They deserve a mother who teaches them kindness, Grandma Rose interrupted. Until that happens, perhaps it's best if you all take some time to reflect on your behavior. As we drove to the lake house, Emily and James's spirits began to lift. Grandma Rose's estate was magnificent, a sprawling property with manicured gardens and a private beach. It was a place they had only visited twice before, as Amanda usually monopolized family gatherings there. The party that followed was everything my twins deserved. Somehow, Grandma Rose had arranged for a professional cake decorator to arrive, creating a masterpiece that put Amanda's original store-bought cake to shame. Games were organized on the lawn, and every child got a turn on the paddle boats. "Mom," James whispered during a quiet moment, "why does Aunt Amanda hate us so much?" My heart ached at his question. "She doesn't hate you, sweetheart. Some people just forget what really matters in life. Money," Emily chimed in, wise beyond her years. "That's all she cares about." Before I could respond, Grandma Rose appeared beside us. "You're quite right, Emily, and sometimes people who only care about money end up losing something far more valuable." She gave me a meaningful look before turning to address all the party guests. "Before we cut the cake, I have an announcement to make." The children gathered around, faces sticky with ice cream and excitement. Even the other parents seemed intrigued. "Today, I witnessed something that broke my heart," Grandma Rose began. "I saw members of my own family trying to hurt these two precious children on their birthday. But I also saw something beautiful. I saw Emily and James show grace and dignity far beyond their years." She paused, her eyes sweeping the crowd. "That's why I've made a decision. The lake house, this entire estate, will be put in trust for Emily and James." Gasps rippled through the gathering. One of the other mothers dropped her punch glass. "When they turn 21, this property, along with the majority of my estate, will belong to them. Because they understand what truly matters, and it's not designer labels or social status." Tears welled in my eyes. Emily and James looked stunned, too young to fully grasp the magnitude of what their great-grandmother had just done. My phone buzzed frantically, messages from Amanda, then Margaret, all demanding explanations. I silenced it without reading them. "There's more," Grandma Rose continued. "Starting immediately, this house will be managed by Olivia on behalf of the children. Which means," she smiled warmly at my twins, "you can visit any time you want." Amanda chose that moment to appear, having obviously ignored the earlier dismissal. She stormed across the lawn, her face contorted with rage. "You can't do this," she screeched. "What about my children? What about their inheritance?" Grandma Rose turned to face her, calm but immovable. "Your children will receive exactly what they deserve, a lesson in humility, courtesy of their mother's actions." The party guests watched in uncomfortable silence as Amanda's composure crumbled completely. "This isn't fair. We're family too," she shrieked. "Family?" Grandma Rose's voice carried across the lawn. "Family doesn't steal presents from children. Family doesn't mock someone's clothes or their living situation. Family protects each other, loves each other, builds each other up." She turned to my twins, who were watching the scene with wide eyes. "Emily, James, you and your mother have shown more grace and dignity today than Amanda has shown in her entire life. That's worth more than all the designer clothes in the world." Amanda stood there, mascara running down her face, as the reality of what she'd lost began to sink in, not just the inheritance, but the respect of everyone watching. Her own children looked embarrassed, finally seeing their mother clearly. As she fled the party, her expensive heels sinking into the manicured lawn, I heard Emily whisper to her brother, "This is better than any present, isn't it?" James nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "Way better than what Aunt Amanda tried to steal." The party continued into the evening, with Grandma Rose orchestrating everything perfectly. As I watched my children laugh and play, finally free from Amanda's constant belittling, I realized this birthday had given them something priceless. The knowledge that they were worthy, valued, and loved, designer labels or not. But this wasn't the end of the story. Amanda's reaction to losing her expected inheritance was about to set off a chain of events that would expose even darker family secrets. The aftermath of the birthday party hit our family like a hurricane. Amanda, unable to accept her loss of inheritance, launched a vicious campaign against us. She began spreading rumors that I had manipulated Grandma Rose, claiming I'd somehow coerced her into changing her will. But what Amanda didn't know was that Grandma Rose had documented everything. She'd been watching, waiting, collecting evidence of Amanda's behavior for years. 3 days after the party, we all received an email from Grandma Rose's lawyer. Attached was a video compilation, dozens of security camera clips showing Amanda's treatment of my children over the years. Clips of her mocking their clothes when she thought no one was watching, of her telling her own children not to play with those poor cousins, of her deliberately excluding them from family photos. I installed those cameras after I noticed things going missing from my house. Grandma Rose explained during Sunday tea. I never expected to capture such cruelty instead of theft. The most standing clip was from just before the birthday party. Amanda and Margaret in the kitchen, plotting to hijack the celebration. Once we get those presents, we'll have proof they're accepting handouts. Amanda's voice rang clear through the security footage. Then we can convince Rose they're not fit to inherit anything. Margaret's response was equally shocking. It's for the best. That whole branch of the family is an embarrassment. When that video circulated through the family group chat, the silence was deafening. Then the messages started pouring in. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all expressing their horror at Amanda and Margaret's behavior. But Amanda wasn't done. She showed up at my apartment one evening, her expensive car blocking my parking spot. "You think you've won," she spat as I walked my children inside. "I've hired a lawyer. We'll prove Rose isn't competent to make these decisions." I turned to face her, making sure Emily and James were safely inside. "The only thing you'll prove is how low you're willing to sink." Her face twisted with rage. "At least I'm not living off my dead husband's insurance money." That's when another voice cut through the tension. "Actually, you're not living off anything anymore." We both turned to see Grandma Rose emerging from her car, her driver holding the door. Even at 92, she knew how to make an entrance. "Amanda, dear," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "I just had a fascinating conversation with your husband about your shopping habits. Apparently, you've been using his business account to fund your designer wardrobe. He's quite upset about it." Amanda's face went pale. "You did it?" "Oh, but I did. Family matters, after all." Grandma Rose smiled. "He's freezing your accounts as we speak. Something about federal tax implications." I watched as Amanda crumpled, her designer handbag suddenly weighing heavy on her arm. All her carefully constructed superiority, built on money she'd been stealing from her own husband, was falling apart. "You can either leave my grandchildren alone," Grandma Rose continued, "or I can keep pulling threads until there's nothing left of your designer life. Your choice." Amanda fled to her car, engine roaring as she peeled out of the parking lot. It was the last time we saw her at my apartment. The following weeks brought more changes. Margaret, finally facing consequences for her enabling behavior, was removed from the family trust's board of directors. Amanda's husband filed for divorce after discovering the extent of her financial deception. And my children, my beautiful resilient twins, began to flourish without the constant shadow of their aunt's cruelty. Emily and James insisted on having their next playdate at the lake house. As I watched them run through the gardens with their friends, wearing clothes they picked out themselves from Target, I felt a profound sense of peace. "They're going to be just fine," Grandma Rose said, joining me on the patio. "They've learned what really matters." "Thank you," I said, turning to her. "Not just for the inheritance, but for standing up for them." She patted my hand. "My dear, they earned it. Not through designer labels or social climbing, but through the strength of their character, just like their mother." That Christmas, we'd hosted the family gathering at the lake house. Amanda and Margaret weren't there, having chosen to spend the holiday at some exclusive resort. But the rest of the family came, bringing warmth, laughter, and presents wrapped in love rather than expectations. As I watched Emily and James tear into their gifts, wearing holiday sweaters from Target and grins that could light up the room, I realized that Grandma Rose had given them something far more valuable than an inheritance. She had given them the knowledge that their worth wasn't measured in designer labels or social status, but in the kindness they showed others and the love they carried in their hearts. And that was a gift that no one, not even Amanda, could ever take away.